I started getting into looking at different modalities of like inner work and self-development, and really got into the men's work. And that's where things really started to shift for me. And once I started diving into that, there was all of a sudden this huge story opening up, and I got to learn like, okay, well, yeah, there was a blueprint that was laid out for me growing up. There's generational traumas that I'm dealing with. There's my own inner traumas. There's all these bits and pieces that are causing me to trip over myself all the time. So when I started realizing this stuff and I started diving deeper, it started opening up more doors, you know. And when I was in my early 20s and stuff like that, I was always, you know, figured that life was good, the universe has my back, I'm ready to rock and roll. It's just nothing can stop me. I'm one of those guys that thinks that like, well, if that guy can do it, I can do it. So it's like, I got no problem trying something, right? And when I did that, it's like, that's awesome. But when all of a sudden all these things that I was tripping over and all of the stories that I was telling myself and like just beating myself up when I'd mess up and just, you know, I was my own worst critic, that's when shit would start falling apart again, right? And it was just like, just this non-stop verbal abuse. And, you know, one of the greatest things that my dad ever taught me was that mind over matter. And so that was a fantastic thing for me. And growing up when I was a kid, where that really first came into play, if we were having like, you know, if we were wrestling or whatever and that sort of stuff, and he'd be tickling me and I'd try and tickle him back, I couldn't get him to laugh. He could just shut off that whole trigger of the physical body to the mind. And so he taught me how to do that. And also he taught me about meditation. He taught me about, you know, these things that we can go deep inside of our minds and stuff, right? And so while I was growing up, I'd like play around with that. For some reason, when I was around like 10, 12 years old, I've always been a bit of the class clown kind of thing. I've used humor to get out of weird, sticky situations and that sort of stuff. Or if I felt like I was failing at something, I'd try and make everybody around me laugh so they wouldn't see what was going on. I'm quite a bit of the chameleon, you know, so to speak. And, you know, I was able to, the masks, man. The masks are huge, right? And they're just parts of ourselves, and we can go into that later. I'm big into IFS therapy and the parts of ourselves and get into our true self. And it's like the parts are all these different masks that are just hiding things. But back to the mind over matter, I started doing these things where I'd learn to not laugh, or I'd learn to stop myself from crying. I started doing these things where I would be able to shut off emotional things, where that ended up being a detriment to myself. It was great control of my mind-body experience. However, when I started getting into some of these things where I was deeper in trouble, I would emotionally disconnect. I would use things to numb myself so that I wouldn't actually be feeling any of those problems or any of the pain that was in there. So there's a lot of stuff that got like built up inside me, and the energy got stuck within my body, and it stopped me from being able to actually work through and move forward. So speeding up back to getting into men's work, I really started diving into my shadow and bringing a light to the darkness. And when I started doing that, it was tough, man. Like, it was really tough, but it brought up a lot, and it's helped me like step through. And it's like, if we don't bring those old emotions, that old energy that's bottled up inside our bodies, we don't bring that forward and we don't actually integrate that into our lives now, you're never going to get past it, right? And this is one of the things with IFS and like parts theory, when, you know, we're just continuously letting that part control us, then you don't actually accept that part is trying to do a job to protect you, then all of a sudden, like, you allow that to happen. You speak to that part, you move that energy through your body, you get that out, and you're able to give it a new job that's actually helping you and combining and integrating into that true self of who you want to be. So, a lot of people, they don't want to do the shadow work because it's just too hard. But it's like, if you don't do that shadow work, if you don't bring light to that, if you don't integrate that into the system and the vision that you want to be working into as a human, then you're going to be lost forever. So it's the men's work is being absolutely integral.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed that clip and you want to watch the full unedited episode, go ahead and click over here. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe. It really does mean a lot to me. Thanks so much.